Good evening, America. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I know what's going on. You got the time clock watching, right? Because we're 48 hours from Thanksgiving. You're probably thinking about what you're cooking. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from Washington, D.C. And we're lucky to be inside the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. Wired to Fish Coffee is the official coffee of not only the Solomon family, but of the Just the News brand. And you can go right now to WiredToFishCoffee.com. They have just doubled your discount. We've done so much business with them. They're giving you a double discount now. 20% off anything in the store, including their great coffees, which are my favorite blend. I kicked Dunkin' Donuts out of my house for these guys. They're that good. They also have some great stylish tumblers and mugs, including the Just the News mug. Check that out. We got our own bling for the first time. All right. What a remarkable few days we've had here in Washington. President Trump continuing to build out his team and also to send messages to the world preemptively about what he's going to do. Mexico and Canada got a message last night. Hey, I'm going to be imposing 25% tariffs until you close the border. You won't believe how quickly the Mexican and Canadian leaders called President back with phones and said, hey, I'll make a gesture, Mexico said. We'll actually stop that caravan coming for the border. We got the message, Mr. President. That is the sort of impact that a president-elect can have when they have a clear vision, clear message. It happened in the last 24 hours. A lot of people raving about that. We'll be sure to ask our first guest today about that in a little bit. Andy Biggs from the great state of Arizona, which has been disproportionately affected by the border crisis. But first, as we do always at this moment in the show, I want to turn to my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. She's got some other headlines that you should know about. Hello, Amanda. How you doing? What's on your radar?
Indeed, I do. Thank you, John. I want to get to a few things that may not have been on everybody's radar today, starting with, of course, the war in Ukraine. And as we've been reporting to you for a few weeks now on the show, the Biden administration doesn't really seem to want to bring the war to a close. In fact, the opposite. It seems that they are actually doing things that will escalate the war even further, allowing Ukraine to use U.S. missiles to attack inside Russia or to give Ukraine anti-personnel mines. All of that leads Russia to attack Ukraine with what they say was an experimental hypersonic ballistic missile. It was only carrying conventional warheads, but Russia says it is nuclear capable. Of course, that is a clear warning to the Biden administration. And this all prompted NATO military chief Admiral Rob Bauer to say this.
The idea was we're a defensive alliance, so we will only sit and wait until we're attacked. And then when we're attacked, we will be able to shoot down the arrows that come to us. But it's smarter not only to do that, but also to attack the archer that is in Russia if Russia attacks us. So you need to have a combination of deep precision strike with which you can take out the weapon systems that are used to attack us. And of course, because we're a defensive alliance, we will have to take the first blow. So Russia will start the conflict because we are not going to attack Russia out of nothing.
Okay, now some Russian officials and politicians are saying what Admiral Bauer was advocating for was a first strike against Russia, which isn't the case in that clip, but it is concerning that NATO even feels the need to discuss striking Russia at all at a time when a lame duck administration should not be ratcheting up the conflict before President Trump takes office. There is even talk about sending nuclear weapons to Ukraine, and it's all just very, very frightening stuff. Now, in other news, Hollywood still can't seem to stop talking about President Trump. Here was actress Sharon Stone at a film festival in Italy comparing Donald Trump to Mussolini.
I think we have to really stop and think about things. And we have to stop and think about who we choose for government. And if, in fact, we are actually choosing our government, or if the government is choosing itself. Italy has seen fascism. Italy has seen these things. You guys, you understand what happens. You have seen this before. My country is in its adolescence. Adolescence is very arrogant. Adolescence thinks it knows everything. Adolescence is naive and ignorant and arrogant.
I think maybe she should stick to reading scripts instead of trying to formulate her own thoughts. But of course, she didn't explain how Trump was fascist or what policies he would be implementing that are fascistic. But with Hollywood, you don't really need anything like evidence or proof, do you? something tells me that the financials at the movie theaters aren't going to get much better as we see that industry morphing. But John, that's all I have for tonight to start off the show. So I'm going to hand it back over to you so that we can get the congressman.
I'm kind of I find humor in the fact that she's preaching to Italy, who, by the way, has a conservative majority now. Right? They like Donald Trump,
yes,
and they like
yes.
their own prime minister is very conservative. But
I'm sure Georgia Maloney was thinking her own thoughts about what she had to say.
Oh, yeah. I would have loved to have little bubble thoughts over her head. That would have been fun. All right. Speaking of a guy that has big thoughts that often are right on the money and help this country so much, he joins us from the great state of Arizona, Congressman Andy Biggs. He's also the host of a great podcast. Check this out. It's a great name. I wish I'd thought this idea. What's the Biggs Idea? I love that. Joining us right now, Congressman Biggs. Sir, good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving early. Good to have you on again.
Happy Thanksgiving, John and Amanda, and it's great to be with you on the night watching people like Sharon Stone, who, my goodness, was she trying to channel Kamala Harris there, or what?
That was hysterical. Yeah, bad role playing, but she got the message right, apparently, if you're trying to mimic Kamala Harris. That was crazy. I want to ask about something that's happened in the last 24 hours, which I think really shows the return of American soft power, which we haven't had in the Biden years. Donald Trump simply puts out a tweet saying, until the border is secure, hey, China, Canada, 25% tariffs. Who wants that? And today, wow, the scramble was on. Canada's calling, hey, we want to work with you. Mexico says we're stopping that another caravan coming in. Don't worry, they won't get to the border. Maybe some American soft power back in operation?
Yeah, absolutely. Long been missing and has led to the massive influx of illegal aliens across our border to the tune of probably 12 to 15 million. So great move on the part of the president. I do support his move. I would tell you there's other aspects of soft power because President Sheinbaum of Mexico today was firing back just a little bit, saying, well, maybe we'll put tariffs on too. Let me tell you how badly they need our market. It is remittances from the United States, which is one of their top 3 cash influxes going into Mexico. You want to put a little damper on that? Start taxing those remittances and see how President Sheinbaum feels about that. But certainly Mexico and Canada have taken it to heart, it sounds like. But let's see if they demonstrate it. Because we have to get the return to Mexico policy reinstated that Joe Biden got rid of in the first 24 hours of his tenure, because that will be a tremendous border security disincentive for people to come across our southwest border.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and another piece of that tariff threat was directed at China, and we all know that, especially with respect to fentanyl trafficking across our border, that the precursors oftentimes come from China. That 10% tariff on China, I would imagine that that's going to increase even more if that doesn't slow, if the flow of fentanyl and the ingredients for it don't slow down, especially after January 20th. What do you anticipate the repercussions of that will be for China if they don't listen up?
Well, we will have to ratchet up the tariffs, but we'll also have to provide incentives for businesses to leave China and come back to the United States. Right now, my intelligence from talking to Border Patrol agents is that these fentanyl labs that you have, everything from in garages or to more sophisticated warehouse settings, they almost always come with a Chinese chemist to help them stir up the fentanyl and produce it. So it is time we get tough with China on this issue and so many others, actually.
Congressman, there was an amazing story on our site. Not surprising to you because you've been warning about these costs, but the rising crime caused by the rising border crisis cost Arizona $20.6 billion in 2022, which is the latest statistics they have. That is a staggering amount of money that could have gone to a lot of better things. You've been warning about this. Do you think the wake-up moment for not only Arizonans, but any Democrat-run state is here upon us? People are going to understand they put in impossible costs?
Unless you're in a state that is on the coast, Northeast, or someplace like Illinois, the vast majority of Americans get it. That's one of the reasons Donald Trump's the president-elect. And I want to give you that almost $23 billion perspective. The state budget controlled by the legislature is somewhere around $12 billion. Wow. So that gives you an idea that almost twice as much as the state budget controlled by the legislature, was expended or lost due to crime in 2022 alone. And that's a huge impact on the state, 14th largest state in the country, Arizona.
God, it's amazing.
Congressman, there was another devastating story stemming from the border crisis. A 2-year-old from El Salvador without parents in a group of about 200 illegal immigrants, I think about 60 unaccompanied minors. A 2-year-old found at the border with just, I think, the first name of someone and a phone number on there. You've got people across the board, including Democrats in New York City, who are saying this is an absolute outrage. Is this going to ultimately become the visual emblem of the Biden administration's immigration policy?
Well, it certainly ought to be. I mean, that it's tragic. First of all, that parents or guardians would put a 2-year-old in the hands of a coyote. And let me tell you, coyotes don't care about life. They care about the money because these are commodities. And then you have this 2-year-old who has it looks like a Post-it note with their parents ostensibly, and the parents expect us to reunite this child with them who would be so irresponsible with those parents. That's insane. And then when you consider that this administration has lost 300,000 of unaccompanied minors that are throughout the country, that the last week in our hearing, one of the Democrats on the committee said, well, they're not lost, we've just lost contact with them. Well, you're not having contact, you don't know where they are, you don't know who they're with, you haven't vetted them, you haven't vetted the sponsors. This is a total microcosm of the failure of the border policy of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas.
Yeah, and you've been warning about it and documented it and exposing it. All those trips you've made to the border, all those hearings that you've been a part of, you've done so much to educate us. I want to talk a little bit about those who are going to resist Tom Homan, which is probably not a good bet. If you're on the opposite side of Tom Homan, you don't want to be fighting that guy. But will Congress back the Justice Department and give the ability to Tom Homan to prosecute cities who won't turn over people in their custody who are illegal aliens, and also maybe consider cutting funding for those cities?
Yeah, we're going to give money to DOJ, and believe me, with the new folks going in that are going to be running that in the Trump administration, they're going to be supportive, I've got to believe, of Tom Homan prosecuting people who are obstructing justice or aiding and abetting this criminal activity. And they are. That's what they're doing. That's what a sanctuary city is doing. And it's long overdue. And quite frankly, I've been advocating, and I know you all have too, for years, that you need to defund these sanctuary cities. If they're not going to follow the law, then why should we return federal dollars to them?
Yeah, great point. Really good point.
Congressman, before we let you go, I know that one of the worst issues about the southern border are these, 230,000 children who have just disappeared into the interior of the country. I know it's going to cost money, but this seems to be an issue with a lot of heartstrings connected to the American people. How on earth could we eventually at least reunify some of them with family?
Well, we're going to have to track down the sponsors first and try to track them down. And the question is whether the Biden administration has enough records for us to begin doing that. Don't forget, you have got people that have been sponsored, like a Jacksonville strip club or MS-13 gang members, or one individual allegedly sponsoring hundreds of people, of children. That's the question. So you got to. My thinking is you go through the sponsors to try to track down the children that way, and don't forget that they also stopped doing DNA samples on children under the age of 14. How insane is that? So that means that it becomes very hard to track them down. But it is something that we're going to have to do because we have a moral obligation to do that very thing.
Yeah, and Tom Homan said right here on this show, they're going to try to track every one of those missing children. That is a big take, but it shows the commitment that you and the administration are going to have. Congressman, thank you for joining us. I love your podcast. I listen to it often. And also, I want to wish you an early happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for all you do for our country.
Thank you all. Appreciate being with you. And have a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe, and be well.
That sounds like a good plan. We will, sir. Thank you so much. All right, folks, we've got a lot more to talk about. We'll have more on Jack Smith dropping the charges against President Trump and that $90 million special counsel debt that the American people paid for. We'll have that right after these messages. Hey folks, for more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, standing behind their service and their values as a company. They're an example of putting the cause ahead of profits, and it's why I'm proud to partner with them. Right now, you can get their Every Friday Matters special today. Patriot Mobile is giving away a brand new smartphone when you make the switch. So Patriot Mobile offers exceptional nationwide coverage, giving you access to all 3 major networks without your dollars funding the left. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're supporting free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, Second Amendment, and so much more. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team makes switching easy. Keep your number, and for a limited time, get a free smartphone. Go to patriotmobile.com/justnews or call 972-PATRIOT and use the promo code FRIDAY. Again, you're going to get a free smartphone. Offers eligible only with the promo code FRIDAY. This is a limited time offer until supplies run out. Terms and conditions apply. Join me. Make the switch today. PatriotMobile.com/justnews. That's PatriotMobile.com/justnews or call 972-PATRIOT.
Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. Let's get back to President Trump now and the charges brought against him by special counsel Jack Smith. Those charges have now been dropped, but why? It really doesn't seem, or it really makes it seem like the charges were only there in the first place to stop President Trump from being reelected, and were they even brought legally to begin with? Many have argued that Jack Smith's appointment as special prosecutor wasn't even constitutional. So joining us now to discuss all of that, former federal prosecutor Joe DeGenova. Joe, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Yeah.
Sir, you know, in some of these cases, they are winding down. Some of them, they are fizzling out, but none of them are cases to forgive and forget. And I think the American people desperately want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. To that end, should there be a federal grand jury impaneled? How far back should the witnesses go? Should they dig all the way back to the Obama years? What do you think can be a preventative measure here?
Well, I think there was a violation of Title 18, Section 241 that violated the civil rights of Donald Trump. There is no doubt that there was a conspiracy. It started on January the 17th in the Oval Office in 2017 when President Barack Obama went with John Brennan, James Comey, Joe Biden, Susan Rice, and others, and they discussed the Russian collusion theory, knowing full well that it was false. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, authorized the FBI to investigate it, knowing that it was false. Barack Obama should get the first grand jury subpoena. There needs to be a grand jury. There needs to be a special counsel. The grand jury needs to be in the Southern District of Florida, where the Mar-a-Lago raid occurred, because that was one of the ultimate outcomes of the beginning of that conspiracy to violate Donald Trump's civil rights. I think that one of the first things that Pam Bondi should do is name a special counsel, get this done, get it started, take it away from the Justice Department so it's handled by someone who's completely independent. But there is no way that James Comey, all these people, including Christopher Wray, can get away with this. There needs to be an accounting.
Yeah, you're right. And we never got to the bottom of it with Congress. There needs to be that. And you hit the right point. January 17th, that's the moment it all starts. Joe, I want to ask a little bit. I don't think a lot of Americans know this about you. You were a fantastic U.S. attorney in D.C. You were one of the few independent counsels in the history of this country. You were given a case, and when you found no criminality, you did the remarkable thing. You put no politics in it. You shut it down. How do we get prosecutors back to the culture of just looking at the evidence and not the political outcomes?
Well, regrettably, Merrick Garland, who I used to think was a very responsible, reasoned, even-handed guy, apparently, when he was denied the Supreme Court nomination, a confirmation by Mitch McConnell, he lost his sense of balance. What he has done to the rule of law and the Justice Department is unfathomable. You really can't measure it. He's done horrific damage. The Justice Department needs to be completely reorganized. There needs to be a cleansing. There are a lot of career people there who are wonderful. There are also a lot of career people there who are awful. J.P. Cooney comes to mind. the guy in the public integrity section. That section, by the way, which prosecutes so-called public corruption, needs to be completely destroyed. It needs to be replaced with a new organization to fight public corruption. But this is not hard to do. You pick good people who are honorable and have ethics. And Jack Smith doesn't have ethics. James Comey didn't have ethics. All the people from the public integrity section who were involved in these wild cases. Andrew Weissman, one of the worst, most unethical prosecutors in the history of our country, came out of public integrity. What in the world made these people think that they could change 250 years of jurisprudence and indict a former president of the United States on the worst set of facts you could possibly have, and then do the awful, awful thing of raiding his residence? That will go down in history as an infamous moment for the FBI. Christopher Wray should have resigned after that. He should have been fired. But of course, Joe Biden loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Joe, you mentioned Pam Bondi, and I want to ask you about her nomination, because the narrative that I keep hearing from the left is that she's dangerous and terrifying because she's competent.
Yeah.
What do you think? What does that tell you about the way that they have come to believe the DOJ should operate?
Well, just like they think they used to own the media, they think they own the Justice Department, because they used to own the judiciary and the Supreme Court, and they got all the decisions they wanted. That doesn't exist anymore. They don't own the Supreme Court. They don't own the federal judiciary. They own the Justice Department right now and the FBI, but not for long. The left believes in what it wants to believe in. They have no standards. And remember, their rule is change the rules. If you don't like what's happening, change the rules. Eliminate the filibuster. Add to the Supreme Court. Let's get more justices on that believe the way we do. This is an incredible abuse of our constitutional system. The progressives have gone absolutely nuts. And what happened on November the 5th was a fabulous rebuke of the progressive movement in this country, whether it's men in women's sports, or the outrageous abuse of prosecutorial functions in New York and Georgia and the Justice Department. The American people sent a signal, loud and clear, even if the Democrats don't want to admit it. They want this all stopped. But more than that, they want accountability. They want to know who was responsible for this, who did it, who was in that meeting with President Obama on January the 17th, 2017, besides the famous people that we know about. Grand jury subpoenas need to go out so we can get some answers.
Yeah, really important. Joe, you are a personal victim of this, but it is a thing that a lot of prosecutors tell me they're most worried about: the trend lines of piercing attorney-client privilege on grounds that really had no criminal basis. We now know there was no criminal basis to investigate President Trump for Russia collusion, but a lot of attorney-client privilege was pierced here. In your case, the Rudy Giuliani case, clearly no crime. He walked away. Your law records were seized by the government without even you being able to contest it. That's an area that I don't think a lot of people in Congress are talking about. How do we fix that and bring the standard back up to what it used to be?
We have to expose it. We, for example, right now, Victoria Tunsing, my wife, has filed a Freedom of Information lawsuit to get the records related to that search warrant. The Justice Department has refused to produce any documents relative to it until very recently, and they produced nothing more than newspaper articles when they were given an opportunity to do so. No internal Justice Department documents. And so what I say is, when this special counsel is appointed, one of the things they have to investigate is the way the attorney-client privilege was pierced by Jack Smith. And I must tell you, the complicity of federal judges in this has been disgusting. Beryl Howell, who was the former chief judge of the District of Columbia District Court, performed abysmally as a judge. Things that she said publicly, things that she said during the court proceedings, abusing her power as a federal judge. One of the most awful, awful situations, piercing the attorney-client privilege at will, the attorney-client privilege for a president of the United States. Absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So much of this has been outrageous from its inception. Again, like you said, starting in January of 2017. Joe DeGenova, former federal prosecutor, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you at Just the News. Great stuff.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Good
much,
to see
sir.
you.
All right, everybody. Coming up after the break, homeschooling is becoming much more popular. I love it. So if you are thinking about homeschooling your kids, how can you get started? We're going to have some of those answers next.